welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming this evening in central London. For those of you who don't know, Lindsay and Eileen have presented for our committee a few times before, I think at least 2, maybe 3. I'm losing count, but that's a great blessing for our committee because they're amazing speakers. So they're part of House of PMO, and if there's anything about project management or PMO that they don't know, it's not worth knowing. So basically you are in the right place to know about how to get into project management. So just house rules: if you do hear the alarm going off, then that is not a drill, that is an actual event taking place. So basically head out the doors and turn to the right to head towards the fire exit. And generally, yeah, just use this as an opportunity to learn and ask questions, do the best, like I said, in terms of knowledge for project management. So we've also, I should mention, sorry, so this is a joint event with the BCS Women group. And unfortunately, Andrea can't make it tonight. She had a last minute challenge to actually be in London, but she is online. And Andrea, we're sorry you can't make it here. The camera's over there, by the way, for the online event. So we're obviously, we've got a presence here, we've got a presence online. So it's our hybrid version of this event, which is great because it allows people to join from anywhere in the world. And I wouldn't be surprised if we've got people from North America, like some of the previous events. You've got a big following. So without any further ado, with a little plug actually, thank you, David. So David is our chair, the project management specialist group chair, and he's kindly reminded me of this amazing spring school, which is going to take place next month. So every year we hold this, and this year it's going to be an online event, and it's completely free. You should be able to register. If you take a picture of that QR code, it should take you to our website where you can register, and I strongly recommend that you get involved in that. So we've got some amazing speakers, and it's all about responsible project management. And in today's day and age, with sustainability and the environment being very, very topical, I think it's definitely something you should find out more about, because that's the future. So take a picture of that. If you haven't got one, some of the FAR chairs haven't got any, feel free to come forward and grab a flyer. But I would urge you to register for that event. It's 4 weeks in March, basically consecutive Thursdays, and it will be some amazing speakers again. And in fact, the chair of the BCS is going to be joining as well. So I think, is that the final week?
On week 4, yeah, the chief executive.
Yeah. So we actually got him involved in this spring school before he actually became the chief exec of the BCS. So that was quite a coup on our part, I think. But anyway, right, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to...
Can I say something, please?
Oh, sorry, yes.
I may not be there in person, and I'm very sorry that I'm not there in person, but I'm Andrea Palmer, I'm the chair of BCS Women. And I would like to, obviously thank Asim and the Proms group, but also Lindsay and Eileen for this joint event today. As BCS Women, we try to help attract, retain, and support women through their careers in tech. And over the last year, we've been running a number of taster sessions to show how we can get people into tech, or change direction that they're in as a result of being either early careers, returning to work, or the over 50s. Project management has a lot of transferable skills, and this was why it was recommended that we brought Eileen and Lindsay back to do this talk. So I'm very pleased that we've been finally able to do it, because we were going to run it last year, and unfortunately due to the Queen's passing, we were unable to actually carry this out. So it's wonderful that we haven't given up and we've persevered to get this done today. So thank you. And one other thing that that's in the chat, Asim, is could at some point you put a slide up with the QR code for your PM school, because lots of people can't actually see that.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
Amazing. So enjoy the evening. I'll hand over Eileen and Lindsay.
Because Lindsay can't stop herself. She's just been letting everybody else in the Zoom room while Asim's been talking. So welcome everybody at home or wherever you're situated, as well as it's just absolutely fantastic to see people actually in the room. So we're going to play with the technology. So we've got people on Zoom. So really interesting in terms of from a chat perspective, we can't see the chat. So if there is any questions that come up in chat, we're dependent on Asim to kind of do that. For those people in the room, if you want to put your hand up, ask us any questions as we go through, feel free. Yes, it won't put us off our step at all. So it's your session. So make sure you get the answer that you want through this. So kind of just jump in, join in, put your hand up, add things if we've missed anything out.
Yeah, super duper. So let's get started then, because there's a lot to get through. So I'm Lindsay, and I've been in and around project management since the late 90s. I have been worked in PMO. I worked in broader in project management. One of the reasons why I feel like I'm able to talk to you today is that I've actually spent 20 years around recruitment around project management, which is the whole thing about getting into project management, ultimately about the jobs and all that kind of good stuff. So I can certainly talk to you about that. Number of years spent career coaching, helping people not only get into project management, but get better at what it is that they're doing. Done writing around this subject, and the House of PMO, very much around PMOs, project management office, that kind of thing, and been doing that more recently for the last 7-8 years, I think it is. So a lot of experience around the whole careers side of it, which is going to go lovely with Eileen, and she'll tell you exactly where her background is, and then together I think we make a good team in terms of this subject of getting into project management. On that note, how did I get into project management? I left university, didn't know what I was going to do. Extremely lucky that I got a job working in a business administration type role for Hewlett Packard, and I landed in their project management department. Pure luck. That was, and obviously worked from that point. Yes, okay, I've got this great opportunity. How do I then, grow with it and things? So yeah, a combination of luck, being in the right place at the right time. Eileen.
Right, and so already the technology is fun and games in terms of making sure we've got the right window on to make sure we can go through the presentation. There we go, that's me. I'd just come out the hairdressers while that would take. It's Lindsay's tip. If you're going to get your photograph taken, make sure it's just after you beat the hairdressers. So I met Lindsay, funny enough, over 20 years ago at an event similar to this. Lindsay and I both used to go to PMO events. We used to be, sometimes still are, the last people at the bar, and we used to kind of get chatting, and therefore we've known each other and had a friendship for lots of years, but have been working together in a commercial sense for the last 7 or 8 years. So I've done a few bits and pieces around kind of PMO, and I think interestingly, I started off in IT, and I was rubbish. Right, and I learned COBOL, and I was really rubbish at it, but I was actually quite good at kind of getting stuff done with the team. And so I ended up kind of going into a bit into project management and doing small bits of IT projects, which I was much more comfortable with. So I had really technical, capable people that I could ask all of the dumb questions, but I was quite good at organising and kind of getting the work done. So that kind of got me onto project management. Then I kind of I kept getting pregnant. So I went and did a kind of sabbatical in HR, because that was quite an interesting bit about, I quite enjoyed the learning and development piece, particularly in the IT space. And then ended up being asked to do some resource forecasting with my HR hat on, to do some resource forecasting for IT projects where we would be using real people fully employed, contractors and consultants, which of course then led me into the PMO. And then never came out of the PMO. So kind of managed a number of different PMOs, and then moved to the other side of the fence and been doing training and consultancy for the last 16, 17 years. So I did a bit of IT and then kind of went into project management, out of project management into HR, and then back into PMO, which is within the project management arena. So kind of probably an interesting route. Since then, I've also, I think, which is a really interesting bit, and I want to add this in, because I do think this is important and it'll come up again in terms of some of the things we talk about, is that I actually have managed a couple of training companies in my time around project management training, but actually understanding how a business runs, understand what kind of the commerciality of organizations, understanding, you know, kind of how different projects have an impact on your organization, understanding the markets that you work into is an important part of actually kind of understanding where projects fit and fit into that overall kind of project management community. So that's me. We are going to ask a couple of questions, so I need to sit down for this bit. So we're going to play with some technology. So if you can get your phones out. For those of you who've used Mentimeter before, you can, oh, this is going to be fun. You can go onto your Mentimeter app, or you can go to www.menti.com. And we're just going to we'll go part way through on the technology. I just need to make sure I've got it on my screen as well. All right, here we go. So if you're on menti.com, so you need to type in the code, and you can do this at home as well, everybody. Yeah, menti.com 1242 4240. And this is the easiest question. Are you a member of BCS or not? So this is just your kind of practice question. Oh, look how interesting. Got a few people who are got even split at the minute between those who are members and those who are not members. So obviously open to a wider audience.
What is the code again? What's the
It's at the very top of the page, 1242
okay. Thank you.
4240.
Thank you.
I find this really therapeutic.
Just watching the balls. So we must have had more than just the people in the room joining, because that's over 40 people who've responded. And interestingly, we've got more people who are not members than who are at the moment. That's interesting in terms of kind of for Asim and Andrea, in terms of just knowing who's arrived today. Okay. So we're now going to get a little bit more difficult, because what I want you to do now on the next slide is I actually want you, what you'll have is a free text space now, and I want you to type in where you're actually joining us from. So everybody in the room types London, and London will come up in the word cloud as obviously, hopefully the biggest number.
Big London.
But we get to see where everybody else is. Solly, who's from Solihull? That's my hometown. Interesting, we've got people from Solihull and Birmingham.
Northwest.
And the Northwest, I've got an uncle in Spalding. Northern Ireland, is that the furthest we've got so far? What's the most distant place we've got? Oh, Canada. I think they're winning. I think Canada's winning. Well done to those from Canada for joining. Not sure what time it is. Is it early in the morning? Earlier in the day in Canada it is, yes. Ghana. So that's a same time zone, just further away. 5. Excellent. Right then, so happy we've got a good mix of people, and unsurprisingly the most people from London, because hopefully that's the people sitting in the room. Right then. So this so you know when you follow a flow chart and you get to a point and you branch off. Well, Lindsay and I in our head have got kind of different flow charts depending on the answers to your next screen. We're really interested in terms about where are you in your project management career. So we've given you some options there. I should have there on your screen. So whether you're a student aiming to work in PM when you've project management when you've finished, whether you're already looking for your first job and you want that to be in project management, you're in a technical role, which is essentially where I was a technical person, and I had to make a decision whether I went into project management or stayed technical. I was very much encouraged to go into project management, not to stay in technical. Yeah. And then option 7 is just a nothing. Interesting. Remember I put in that extra on? I must have put in an extra 2. Somebody's taken it. Already, so other. So it must be none of them. I'm going to take that as retired. Yes. So interesting in terms of kind of who the audience are. So we've got quite a few students who are looking to go into project management at some point. Quite a few have done some informal project management, got a taste for it and potentially want to go into a more permanent position as a full-time role. Actually looking for a career change, and Lindsay has spoken to lots of people who've gone through a kind of a career change and decided that project management fits in with their career. And then a few people who are ordering a PM role. So anybody who's already in a PM role, people who are at home, and you'll be able to catch up on this later, if you want to kind of put into chat anything to add to what we're talking about in terms of kind of your experiences of how you got into project management, why you got into project management, do put that into the chat.
And if you're already in a PM role, why not come and stand here and do this session as well?
Excellent. Right then. So I'm going to stop that share and we're going to go back. I'm going to try stop that share and go back to our presentation. There we go. I just need to remember where all of the buttons are.
You're doing a good job.
That's the slideshow. One machine. I just need to do this in here to make sure I'm on the slideshow as well. Oh, yes. That's your slide. I know, a bit technology as well. Right then, so this is all of the things we're going to be covering off this evening. Lindsay and I will be doing a double act. You'll know we've swapped over. For those of you who can't necessarily see us, there's a bit of a change in accent. So we're going to talk a little bit about what project management is and really start to give an understanding. People sometimes have quite a narrow role about expectation in terms of what project management looks like, and really look at the role of a project manager, where actually the project management profession is much, much broader than that. So we'll talk about the broad spectrum about kind of what the profession looks like, some typical roles, what do you actually need, you know, kind of what's a good project management professional look like, some questions for you, what are organizations actually looking for when they're going through the recruitment bit, a bit about training and development, and about answering the question we were here and set about getting into project management. And then we've got time for some questions before we go back next door to finish the sandwiches and the wine. Okay. So what is project management? Now, there's lots of kind of definitions about what project management is. And it's essentially just a great big toolbox. There's just lots of stuff in project management that we use for delivering projects. And then there's a great debate about what actually is a project. You know, how big does something have to be before it's a project? And actually, does project management include program management, portfolio management? Where does the PMO sit in all of that? And actually, are these tools actually just things we use in project management, but don't use them anywhere else? And project management, when we think about what a project is, it's on a kind of a sliding scale. So my 8-year-old, 8 tomorrow, 8-year-old granddaughter comes home with something from on Friday from school saying, Grandma, I've got a project to complete over the weekend. Okay, we don't sit down and say, right, then the first thing we're going to do, Eva May, is we're going to do some stakeholder analysis to really do a business case to see whether this project is really worth doing. Yes, because it's not the right kind of size and scale. So these kind of, the use of these tools is very different, and you can play some very kind of different roles depending on how you want to use these kind of set of skills. Just look at kind of some of the things that might determine how and where you might want to play in the project management profession. So first thing is do you actually know what tools exist? Okay. Now, I think somebody needs to, we've got somebody who needs muting there, ask him. So we've got I might know that a saw exists, but could I list 5 different saws? No, I think. I'm thinking about how many my husband's got in his shed. Yes, do I know exactly when to use those particular tools? Which one's the most appropriate? Yes, that's a different level of skill. So we might know a little bit about risk management, but do we know how to do Monte Carlo analysis? Do we know how to do a QSRA? Nearly got the right abbreviations, yes. So actually knowing what tools exist is really where we kind of start playing with project management. And then do we choose the right tool? Yes. So we could, I do know this is a spirit level. Yes. So we can use a spirit level for actually as a ruler, doubles up as a ruler. Yes, straight line, we could draw on it. However, we can't use a spirit level when we want to use a ruler. So we can't use a ruler when we want a spirit level. Yes, so actually, some of project management, about being a good project manager, is actually about knowing what tool to use and actually using the tool correctly. Okay, so I could, somebody says, right, I need you to fry an egg, right, then I can go pick up a frying pan, but if I put it upside down on my cooker, it's not going to do the job I need it to do. Yes, so knowing the tools exist, choosing the right tool for the right event, and also using that tool correctly and recognizing that tools can be used differently. So again, if you're doing risk management for a project, that might look very different from risk management at a portfolio level. So actually knowing how to use and flex some of those tools. There are some people who actually, in the project management profession, actually train people on how to do those tools. And it's always interesting in terms of actually, do you have to do these other three before you can move on to a kind of a coaching or a mentoring role in and around project management? This is a really interesting one when we talk about people who go into the PMO sometimes, yes, and they're trying to support project and program managers, and they're very often challenged to say, well, actually, when was the last time you ran a huge project and you're trying to get me to do things and do things in a different way? So we've got people who coach and train using those tools. We've got people who actually perhaps choose the tools that need to go in the toolbox. So you will have people in organizations who say, well, actually, we're going to use this particular system. We're going to use this particular process. We're going to use these particular templates. Again, they're all part of the project management profession in order to do that. And then there's also some interesting roles around actually who goes around and actually kind of just provides a level of assurance to say, actually, people are picking the right tools. So you're not necessarily left alone to do whatever you want, whenever you want. There are certain people who go around and just assume, and check, provide some assurance that the right tools have been selected, but also about making sure not only that those tools are being selected correctly, but also the fact that they're being used correctly as well. So very often, yes, this is where, can we use the tool? Can we apply risk management? Can we apply planning and scheduling? Can we apply issue management? Tends to be where a lot of the focus goes when starting to look into project management, where actually there's lots of other elements around project management that provide opportunity for you to move into that role.
One of the interesting things that I've come across in 20 years of talking to people about getting into project management is that when you ask people, why project management? And sometimes it's an appreciation of just what project management is. I mean, there's a massively broad spectrum that goes on. So it does vary from organisation to organisation. So the way that one organisation chooses to deliver change will be completely different to another. So you think that you might be, I'd like to work in this type of environment, this type of organisation, and I want to get trained up and be ready to work in that kind of way. But actually, you might find that they do project management very differently. So that in itself can cause a lot of confusion about when you're thinking about getting into project management and what I need to know, what I need to understand about. You might find that there's a vast difference, and sometimes really vast. One of the ways that we sometimes talk about that is that there are organisations that have more towards an informal project management approach, which, is very lax, or, a lot of their processes and things that they're using are not mandated, and, it's a bit of a more laid back approach to it. Informal project management is probably something many of you are already doing anyway, because that generally tends to be one of the reasons why people get a taste for project management. I think I'm good at planning, I'm good at organising, I'm good at getting things done. Those kind of things are like the more informal project management. And then you've got right on the other end of the scale, what we call really formal project management. And I call them kind of like construction project management is such a controlled type of environment that the project management skill there are completely different. And what the expectation is of what you need to know, and the approaches that you'll take in that kind of environment, and the education you need, completely different. So very different from organisation to organisation. And not only that, you've got project management within different parts of the organisation. So we call it domain. So we talk industry sector, you know, I want to work in retail or finance or, you know, whatever. We've also got domain project management, which will be things like IT project management within HR, strategy related, research and development, finance, you know, different aspects and, you know, within different parts of the business, again, dictates, well, what kind of project management am I getting into? So we've got different parts within the business. And it is pretty much found in nearly every industry sector. Working in recruitment for a long time, you were surprised by just how diverse it can be. Because one minute you're talking to an organisation that's one of the high street banks and they're looking for, you know, I'm looking for an IT project manager that's going to be able to do some infrastructure type projects. The next call could be somebody like National Farmers Union, and they're wanting a project manager that's going to be able to work with, you know, a nationwide project on a certain initiative dealing with farms. You know, you talk to people that were maybe working in education and there's a new program, but they're rolling out again nationwide that it's all to do with schools. So you get this variety that is just, you know, it's vast. So you also get differences in terms of the countries that you're working within. And maybe that's down to culture, just like it would be in terms of the kind of industry sector or domain that you're working in. You get that same kind of thing across country lines as well, different approaches. You know, if you look at the Americas, they do prefer their project managers to be PMP'd. Everybody know what PMP is? Yeah, when you hear that, that's from an associate called Project Management Institute, and that's their training that they need to go through, and they prefer that. Whereas here in the UK, you've got BCS, you've got APM, again, different approaches, different schools and body of knowledge and things like that. So they'll vary depending on country as well. Projects will obviously range from the simple to the complex and the complicated, or the simple to the complicated and the complex. So a little bit more like we were saying, informal projects, perhaps on the simpler side, and then you're going all the way up to the massive thing. We just got off the Elizabeth line. I reckon that was probably a very complex project that we were working on. So in terms of this kind of stuff, when you're first getting into project management, you generally tend, not necessarily working on simple stuff, but it's less risky is often the way that we will phrase it, that you'll be working in something that, you know, you're still quite new to the game. We're not going to give you one of the biggest projects that business has got. So you'll be working, you know, more towards that simpler side, less risky projects as you start your career in project management. It has actually got one of the broadest salary ranges that you can probably expect to see. Anything from a, you know, school leaver apprenticeship, working all the way through the PMO routes and project supporting routes, project management, program management, portfolio management, chief project officer. So you're looking at anything from you know, the lowest minimum wage right up to 150, 200, 300, 400,000. Again, it's all based on, and generally tends to be, level of accountability, but how risky and complicated that project is. Yeah, so that's why you get such a wide range in the roles as well. And that's the thing about it. When we say getting into project management, I'm scratching my head and I'm thinking, what are we going to talk about here tonight? Because I don't know. And it's the reason why we had that poll. What's your circumstance? Because it differs in terms of the advice you would give as to how you're going to get into project management. But the other thing is when we say project management, do you actually know what is available in terms of the different types of roles? And it is vast. You know, I think when I first started working in this environment, you know, there was a project manager, you'd hear maybe program manager, you definitely heard project planner, scheduler type person, a project administrator, that kind of thing. And now you've just got a whole vast amount of different titles which are going in at different levels of projects. Yeah, so you've got the project related roles, you've got the program ones, you've got the portfolio level ones, you've got enterprise level type stuff where you're, you know, roles that are looking at all the change that's going on within that business. You've got roles that are in organizations where they're working with their clients. you know, give different kinds of role titles. This is not the complete list, by the way. But the interesting thing is that when you're trying to get into project management, it's where are you? What are you thinking? What are you thinking in terms of the role? Are you all sitting here tonight thinking, I want to be a project manager? Because actually, there's different options available because not everybody is suited to be a project manager. And actually, when you realize what some of these other roles do, you'll find out that some of them are actually vastly more better, in my biased opinion, than being a project manager.
Yes, I did project management. I went into PMO, and I always tell a story. I went into PMO, I thought I died and gone into heaven, and never wanted to go back into kind of project management. So PMO is where we sit. It can, you know, after all of that, it can appear kind of quite daunting in terms of, well, where do I start and where do I go? And so what we wanted to do is just kind of quickly talk through some of the different elements of things that are useful for you to have as a project professional, and as a kind of a seasoned project professional, you'll potentially have lots of all of these. But actually, one of the great things about project management, regardless of where you start, is that you can take an awful lot of whatever role you're doing. So whether you're doing a technical role, whether you're doing an administrative role, whether you're doing a role at kind of a completely different job in an organization, there will be elements that you can take and use as your starter for actually kind of starting to move into a project management role. So let me just kind of take you through some of the kind of the 4 areas that you might start thinking about. Well, actually, I've got some of that, so I've actually got something to build on rather than starting from a kind of blank sheet because I haven't got a project management qualification or I've got no experience in project management. So undoubtedly there are technical project management skills. Now, this is a really interesting one in terms of when Lindsay was talking about more formal project management. Project management is, in essence, just kind of common sense. Yes, we think about doing something, we kind of do some planning to work out what we're going to do, we do it, and then we check whether it went okay. It is essentially what project management is all about. And we all do that on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so I cook for the family, and you know, kind of I very rarely kind of sit down. I sit down at the beginning of the week and do my menu plan for the week, but actually when I'm cooking tea every night, I just kind of get it done and it's fine. Christmas Day is a little bit different. Yes, Christmas Day I do have my crib sheet because, as Lindsay said, a lot more complex. Yes, we've got tend to have a lot more people. There tends to be a lot more food on Christmas Day, and I just need to have all my timings correct. So I just have all my detailed timing. And what happens is, as projects get more complex, actually we get more formal. Some of the processes we use, some of the checks and balances that need to have are more formal. But if you think about what you do on a daily basis, yes, you're probably using some project management tools in your day-to-day job, right? You all got here. Well done, right? That you will have used some planning skills to get there. Yes. You might have checked the time that the trains are running. You might have worked out your journey in terms of how you were going to get here. Yes. So that you've already got some kind of planning skills. Now, you may not necessarily have kind of thought through those planning skills, but you've definitely got some planning skills. Every time you cross the road, hopefully I don't do this, most people do a bit of risk management. Yes, they look both ways because they're trying not to get run over. Yes, I'm not a big fan of that, but most people do that. Yes, but in the work that we do, in our operational business as usual, non-project roles, we do think about, oh, actually, if I don't phone somebody, they're going to complain and create me some work further on down the line. So we're already demonstrating some of those project management competencies, but not necessarily in a formal or structured way. And it's really interesting to kind of go through a project management competency and say, well, actually, if I say this in plain English, I'm actually doing a lot of these things. And then it's about kind of moving on and kind of being able to articulate that in some of the project management terminology. We've talked a bit about, Lindsay talked about both industry and domain knowledge. So understanding, yes, your organization and how things work, understanding your industry and how things work is sometimes really important. And one of the interesting bits around this kind of contextual knowledge, and again, it happened, and we say a lot in IT, is that people start with all of their technical skills, then they get asked to kind of manage a bigger piece of work, and all of a sudden they've got to start writing things down. Yes, really interesting. My son graduated a few years ago and he went into work and obviously has no interest in what his mother does, but all of a sudden he's now working on some projects and is going, I've got to produce some estimates, ma'am, for how long I've going to take to do some tasks. So it's really been an interesting kind of learning from him to go, well, actually, if I put in a really high estimate, then I'm going to come in early. But then he gets smacked around the head because it's too expensive to give to the client. So he's had to really kind of hone those skills, but actually kind of understand how that works in a project where you're doing it from a client is what he's learned. And gradually again, we'll get to the point where actually he will continue to develop managing a bigger piece of technical work, but then decide on whether he wants to go into project management or he wants to stay on the technical side. So actually, as you can build your project management knowledge and expertise while you're still doing your current role, whether that be in IT or HR or any other part of the industry, because actually you're just kind of managing more. So as a team manager, as a line manager, you can practice using some of those skills in the context that you work in. They'll talk about managing people, managing the work, but leading the people. You will need some people skills. Yes, you will need to engage with a whole variety of people in and around projects. You will need to be able to motivate people. Now, these are not skills that, as I say, are just within project management. So if you've got some kind of team leading skills, you've got some motivational skills, some coaching skills, some training skills, all of these are good things that are transferable into project management. And I put behaviors on here because this is a really interesting one. Because we all know those kind of people who are technically competent, but you would never want to work with just because they're a pain. Yes. And so good, effective project management also requires us to be able to demonstrate and engender the right behaviours for the people who work in and around our project. So again, being able to demonstrate those correct behaviours, being able to be an exemplar for some of those behaviours or transferable skills to bring you into project management. So potentially everybody in the room has got, so anybody who's kind of doing any kind of studying and has planned when they're going to get their assignments in, assuming you get them in on time, yes, has done some planning. So wherever you are in your career, there are elements that you can bring and say, well, actually, this is my starting point for recognizing that I've got some skills, capability and knowledge that will take me into project management. And we're going to come on to kind of how to be able to build that.
Okay, so I've got some questions for you. If you're sitting here today and you're wanting to get into project management, what I used to have in my career and recruitment and careers and things, I'm speaking to a lot of people about wanting to get into project management. And there is a lot of people that do want to get into project management, and why not? It's a really interesting and challenging, diverse kind of job. We all would like a job where we enjoy getting up in the morning and going and doing something that really does test us on many levels. So it is a popular choice. So often what will happen is, working in the field that I was, that people come like, oh, I'd really love to get into project management. How can I do it? It's a classic chicken and egg situation. How do I get into project management if I've got no experience? Yeah. And then how can I get a job in order to be able to get the experience? Yeah? So that's a big problem that most people have around, how do I get started? But there are a couple of questions that you can be thinking about right now. Why do you want to get into project management? I really want to be able to hear somebody telling me the real reasons why, so you've actually thought about why project management for you. And you'll get asked this. If you really want to get into project management, you've got a bit of a journey ahead of you and you're going to be meeting lots of different people. And this question will come up in various different guises. But it's about being able to have a really good, thoughtful answer to this, but demonstrates that you're really, interested, passionate about this. You've done your homework. Often I get people saying, I want to get into it because somebody told me that I'm really good at organising stuff, or I want to get into it because I've taken my Prince 2 qualification. Not good enough. We need a proper answer, a really well thought out answer as to why, because it's going to sustain you on this journey of getting into project management and then hopefully onwards and upwards in project management. You've got to be able to understand have you got the right stuff? You know, so you've got to understand what that right stuff is. And Eileen's just been talking through some things there, and we're also going to share, you know, later on in this session about what organizations look for as well. But, you know, have you got the right stuff? You know, do you understand enough about project management and the kind of roles and what they demand? And do you recognize those things in yourself? Because again, you're going to need to be able to demonstrate this as you go down on this just journey of trying to get into project management. Understanding what it is, you know, by actually doing that research around project management, because we've just shown that there's lots of different kinds of roles. So do you understand where you might fit in the project management great scheme of different roles available? Is it project manager or is it something else? You know, we've got a lot of different areas that you can go at. Do you know which industry sector or domain or, you know, which area you're wanting to go into? Because we've said it's vastly different. So if you have an idea of taking, you know, I want to get into project management, it's huge. And what you've got to do is narrow it down, because you're just going to get frustrated about where to focus my efforts. You're going to have to do some development. So where do you focus that? You've got to bring it down. Generally, people do, you know, from different scenarios. So we've got students in the room, we've got people that are wanting a career change, people that have been working in a role or more at the moment, doing a bit, wants to do more, lots of different kind of examples. But generally, you know, you will have an idea of, well, where am I and where am I wanting to go? As a student, you may have been doing a particular degree, which is leading you down a certain path. But if it's not, great, you've got a bit of a wider choice to go for. Generally, what I would say, though, construction project management has a very different career path to that of business, IT, all the other types of project management. Generally, from a student point of view, if you're wanting to get into construction project management, you may have done a degree in it, apprenticeship, or doing, you know, certain types of training around that. It's very different to that business and IT route. Yeah, you can generally, you know, start working in a business and IT route without, you know, a vast amount of study and all that kind of stuff. Generally, it's because they're project managing buildings, bridges, and we don't want those falling down. So they have a very different kind of approach in their education. But do you know which industry sector, business function? You're going to narrow it down, because that's going to help you in terms of trying to make sure you're thinking about the next steps. And I will tell you about how to get into project management and what some of those steps might be as we go further down. But these are the questions that you need to be thinking about right now. So are you aware of the roles? I've shown you some of the titles. It's up to you to go away and start doing that research to see what these roles entail. And you may find that after you've done looking at some of those roles, and I'm sure the deck's going to be available to you so you can go back and have a look at them all, you may find that it's not project management. It might be a business analyst. It might be change analyst, change manager. It might be something else that sits on the peripheral of project management. It might not be project management at all. Yeah, so it's about doing the research to understand there's roles that sit outside of project management that are still related to changes that are happening in a business. So again, there's subtleties there, and there's probably a different career path which through BCS as well. So do you need to keep up to date with the PM profession? Absolutely. Because there's nothing worse than going down this journey, getting opportunities, talking to people and not knowing what's been going on. So I can just imagine it now. You've been given an opportunity through a friend of a friend. I'm interested in getting into some project stuff. They give you an opportunity that says, yeah, do you know what? Judging based on what you've been doing before, I think PMO would be a really good route for you. And you're like, PMO what? Yeah, it's about being able to understand what's going on around project management, because you'll never know when that opportunity comes knocking based on the kind of people that you'll be talking to along the way. So a lot of reading, research, all that kind of stuff, because project management is changing and continues to change. What do you bring to the table as a potential PM? You know, we talked about the skills, as the, you know, all of that kind of learning type stuff that Eileen's touched on there. There's the attitudes, there's the you know, the capabilities, the experiences. And what is it that you're bringing to the table? A student has certain things they're already bringing to the table. If you imagine an organization today is looking for a project related person to come and join their organization, they're going to be looking for certain things. Yeah. We have all got, regardless of where we are on our career journeys, whether we're just coming straight out of university or we've been working in a technical role for 20 years, we have all got transferable skills. And it's that you're going to be focusing on. It's those transferable skills that putting them into a project context. And I've talked to you a little bit more about what that actually means. But it's about understanding the self-awareness of you and what you've already got is going to help you on this journey if you really do want to get into project management. And, you know, like I said, right at the top of this, I fell into it. I was lucky. You might be lucky too, but you might not. And you might have to think about what's the stepping stones to get to where you want to get to. It's very rare that you'll see somebody walking out of university at 21 years old, 22, 23, going into a project management role where it's a risky project. It's not going to happen. But there will be stepping stones that you can take in order to get you there. And it's about being able to understand the potential, you know, what you've already got today, stepping stone 1. We'll worry about stepping stone 2, 3, 4 further down the line. We want to get you into project management first of all. And what I'm going to share with you is how do you maybe get to that first stepping stone, because that's all we're worrying about right now, getting into project management, step 1. So some of the questions for you, thinking about, you know, this is something that you want to do, this is the rest of your life potentially. You know, guarantee that if you get into project management, you'll not leave ever. You'll get different roles, but as Eileen said, project management's everywhere anyway. You know, you could become a CEO of something, you could even start your own small business. You know, it could be any of those things, and you'll be using those project management skills. Once it gets you, it's very hard to leave. What I want to know is your views right now. So back to Menti. We talk about what organizations generally look for when they're looking to bring on project people into their organization.
So what you'll get on your Menti screens, you'll get the 5 options. So pick the first one that you think organizations look for first, and then it'll give you the 4 that are remaining. Pick the one you think second, and then third, then fourth and fifth. So you get to rank. They're just the order of the questions. There you'll see somebody's put them in and said they think they're looking for PM experience first. So as more people put them in, we'll get a view as to what you think organizations are looking for. And then Lindsay will tell you from her experience what they're actually kind of where they're going for.
Hey,
What you'll see is people are putting their answers in.
I always think this is like
Engine.
horse racing or something. It's like, you know, here's runners and riders. The number 1 at the moment, domain sector experience, knowledge and experience.
Interesting that the top 2 are all about experience.
I'm sorry to say it, but it's like no surprise.
But I think it goes back to that, isn't it? In terms of when people think about experience, they think experience is project management, as opposed to being able to frame what they've done in whatever role you've done through a project management lens.
How many are we doing? We're on 50 people taking part. So thanks if you've taken part at home as well as in the room. That's super. Generally, by and large, what you tend to find is that this would be higher, is personality and personal approach. Because we're talking about generally project management is a people business. You know, we can forget about whether you're building a bridge or whatever, you know, an IT system. Project management is about trying to get people to do things that you want them to do in the right time, in the right order, all of that kind of stuff. So actually, it's a very people-based business, which means that this bit is actually a lot more important than you think. People get great results just by being a great manager, a great leader, all of that kind of stuff. Generally, what tends to happen is organizations are very risk averse when it comes to recruiting. Okay, you want people that have been around the block a few times. That's what I mean. You walk straight out of university, you're not going to get that top job or that, you know, a project manager role straight away, because, you know, they need somebody that's been around the block a few times. You know, some of these projects can be 1, 2, 3, 4 million, whatever it might be. Why would a business entrust that with you? You know, you haven't enough experience to be able to manage a £4 million budget. It's just not, you know, it's not rocket science. You can understand why organizations do that, but they are generally very risk averse. So again, you know, when you're trying to get into project management, you've got to think about the kind of routes in and the kind of level that you'll be going in at, and the different kind of roles. Because in terms of project manager, let's take that as a title, there are different levels. So you might have let's start from a lowest level, project coordinator, generally supporting a project manager. So you're going in at a supporting level. They don't have an accountability for the success of that project. They're purely supporting that project manager. It's a low level risk, you know, low level risk type job to go into. You've then got above that assistant project manager, or used to be called junior project manager. Not allowed to use that word anymore because it's around ageism and stuff. So assistant project manager, generally you're going in and working alongside a project manager. You might be given more stuff to do from the project manager, some of it a level of accountability, but ultimately it's a project manager, buck still stops with them. Then you're into project manager level, and all that will entail taking on certain projects, different levels of projects, and then senior project manager, program manager, and so on and so on. So there's different levels against the, you know, what's the PM experience here? Yeah, so even when we're sitting here in this room and say, I haven't got a lot, that's fine. It's all about trying to find the right level for you. What did I say? Stepping stone number 1. Yeah, you might want to be somewhere else, stepping stone 4. We're not worrying about that right now. But it is generally the PM experience, because they're quite risk averse, and fair enough, you know, that's, but it is also the kind of person that you are. The lowest is actually education achievement and the professional certifications around the 4th. So it's these 3 essentially. So out of these, I would say it's more project management experience, then the domain, and then the personality. Yeah, which is interesting when we look at getting into project management. Oh, I better get my Prince 2 because everybody's asking for it. Actually, you know, these days it's less important, the whole Prince 2 thing, because so many people here have heard about the whole agile approach to projects and things like that. So the, you know, the landscape's changing all the time. So actually you don't have that much truck with it. However, we know that when it comes to recruitment processes and putting a CV in, that they're doing keyword scanning and all that business, you have got to get over this bit too. But ultimately, you know, these are the things that are really important to the organization. So can you switch on to the presentation, back to the presentation. So have a look at what organizations are looking for when it comes to project managers. And we'll see how that stacks up. So when I've been doing recruitment for large organizations, it is the, you know, I'm generally looking for people who have been around the block a few times, done the project management stuff, but looking for insights into maybe the approaches you've taken. So things like planning would be on there, risk management, issues, change, all those kind of things you'd see around project management. And then that generally it is these 4 things that really do get people to stand out. When we were saying about project management experience is one thing, it's a personal and behavioral approach and the knowledge that they might have from working in that industry sector or domain. Generally, the top level type of feeling from organizations is that with the project management stuff, they don't want people that can just follow the method and the methodology. You know, this is not a tick book, you know, checklist type activity. Unfortunately, you will see that in some organizations that do think that, but it is very much a results driven kind of role for the project manager. And it's not all on the technical skills. That's just a means to an end, getting the result. Good change, good project, on time, on budget, all of that kind of stuff. You know, so it is very much a role that focuses on the result. And it is in relation to that bit, is that it is a very much a business role. And I think sometimes we get bogged down by the project management jargon and the lingo. I really hate that. I think what's happened over the years is that project management's developed a language that is inclusive. It stops people from getting in because it feels like there's a whole language and jargon that goes around stuff. Eileen said it is just common sense. But what we've done over the years is wrapped around all these things that, you know, words like PID, you know, what's all that about? You know, it's trying to make something more complicated than it needs to be, and it shuts people out. Yeah. So generally, what you tend to find is that when it comes to things like getting into project management, and I talked about the transferable skills, the things that you've already got, the way that you might write about those today on your CV or resume, actually there's got to be a switch in the language you're using to make sure that it's matching this kind of thing. And that annoys me, but that's where we are in terms of the whole project management industry. And I think partially that is also about the training is well wrapped up in that as well. But also from a project management point of view is that there is that need that yes, you're delivering projects here and using the lingo and all the rest of it with your project teams, but it is a role that is ultimately delivering change for the business, and you've got that business interface as well. So Eileen, you talked about you had a managing training organizations and getting that understanding of how a business works and that business speak and all that thing that goes with that too. One of the things that has happened a lot in project management is that project managers are chefs. You give the analogy because it's a great one. About the whole chef and the recipe, the menu.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So when Lindsay were talking about this, you can go away and learn on a course exactly kind of do this, and kind of do some stepped project management. But very often what we need is we need to flex for those of you, and this is going to date this presentation, in that at the minute, you'll know the supermarkets are kind of not selling you too many tomatoes, peppers and cucumbers. Apparently Tesco are limiting. So on Monday night, I was at Lindsay's house and Lindsay's husband cooked us a meal. We couldn't have any tomatoes, so we put in some green beans, right? Which was demonstrating that actually, if you think about what we're trying to achieve, the focus was on results to get us a chili, yes, and have something edible to eat. Now, if he dished up sausage and mash rather than the chili, then there would have been some disappointment, but it was actually focused on getting to the result and being able to pick within parameters what's actually going to fit. And this is what we talked about before, about actually understanding about where you can flex and where you can't flex depending on what you're delivering. And you can't just follow a set of instructions. You need to apply some additional knowledge and skills to be able to kind of undertake all of those steps.
And the way that we often talk about it is Prince 2 is a recipe.
Yes.
Something like the BCS project management one is more about, understanding the
cookery skills that you can apply.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Regardless of the project.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it comes back to the people stuff all the time. So if you're working in a role at the moment that does have a lot of team management, potentially you're going to find that the move over to project management easier. If you look at a lot of organizations today that are less risk averse, so what are they? They're risk. If you're not risk averse, then. So what I generally think is that actually, if we can bring in people that do have the good leadership, management of people type skill, we can teach project management stuff. Because actually they're recognizing that it does come down to what you can get out of people, the motivation of it, and all of that kind of stuff. But actually makes the biggest difference. So it's something to bear in mind if you are currently working in a role that does involve a lot of management around people. You might potentially want to think about how you're going to use that on the transferable skills bit, which I'll talk about in a sec. Touched on training, talked about some training courses there.
I'm just sitting here reflecting on some of the things that we're talking about. Now, I can imagine in the audience and some of the audience at home who are probably grinding their teeth at this point, saying, Eileen and Lindsay, we've worked hard. We've spent kind of 20 years in the industry. We've learned our trade. This is a specialist profession where we recognize qualifications and experience. And absolutely agree with that. Yes. And just to kind of go back and reiterate, what we're talking about now is how to use what we've got to get into project management. Once we're in there, there's a whole raft of things that we can kind of expand our knowledge and become masters of that craft. What we're talking about is kind of those, as Lindsay keeps saying, those kind of first few steps. So I've gone back to the kind of the 70-20-10 rule, which people might have heard of it around learning and development. So we talk about 70% on the job, 20% learning from others, and 10% from normal training, kind of standard classroom training. Let me just talk about what that might look like. So whatever job you're doing, yes, you can start trying to apply some project management tools and techniques to just up your skill level. Yes, practice playing. Yes, rather, you know, if I go back to my Christmas dinner, and I'm a big one for using kind of plain simple examples. If I go back to my Christmas dinner, I could create a risk register on all of the things that I might have to mitigate against things going wrong on Christmas Day. Yeah. Nobody said I can't do that, so I can do it at home. I could, if somebody's given me, and I've got a paper to write at the minute, Lindsay knows because she normally writes it and it's my job this year. I could do a project plan and schedule some time in with some kind of key milestones and some assurance points to make sure that I'm actually delivering what should be delivered on that paper. So we can actually, whatever job you're in, whether you're in a business as usual job, whether you're a student, whether you want to use some home examples, you can actually practice doing project management. So you've got a story to tell about how you understand the different aspects of project management and how you've actually practiced them in your day job and also in your private life. Yeah. And when we had everybody living at home, we had 10 of us in the house, we had a big whiteboard, yes, on the kitchen wall, and we used to kind of manage it as a project every week. Yes, it was always interesting. So you can apply project management now. You don't need to get into a project management job to practice. So you've got some words, you've got some descriptions in terms of the elements of project management that you actually enjoy. So some people just do risk management. They don't forget about the rest of it. They're just risk management specialists. You know, going back to the questions that Lindsay was talking about, find the bits that you actually enjoy doing. Yeah. So actually do some practice. And if you can do it in a work environment, then all the better. Come to events like this, yes. So actually go and learn from other people who've done it. Join some, you obviously kind of come along to some BCS events. There's lots of other events, thousands now, webinars available all the time. Actually find out what's going on. And as Lindsay said, you know, I kind of, at one time I used to be the youngest in the room. I'm far from that now. But it's been really interesting. And I'm that old now, actually, in my working life, the whole project management has changed. When I first started, there was project management, program management was just starting to come out, portfolio management's really kind of developed. But when we start looking at things like data analytics, that's come out. Nobody was talking about data analytics when I started doing project management all of those years ago. The change management element has absolutely kind of exploded as well over the last couple of years. So there is constantly new things coming up. So go and kind of read some books, go to some events, talk to people, go and find project management managers in your organizations. And even what's interesting at the universities usually have a PMO who are actually running projects. So if you're a student, go and hunt out your PMO and see what they're doing around project management in your universities and in your colleges. And you can actually kind of see some projects in practice. And then 10% of formal training. Now, formal training, particularly now post-COVID, is not all about going spending an awful lot of money, coming to London for a week and kind of going in a classroom. There's lots of online courses available to you, e-learning and more available. Just make sure you get some reputable ones, and BCS have got a whole range of courses that they have available to you. The important thing though, it needs planning. Okay, what you can't do is expect your line manager to start saying, right, then I just want to make sure that we're keying you up, or, you know, kind of your careers officer to say, we're keying you up now before I move into project management. This is down to you. You need to start from where am I now? What have I got? What transferable skills do I think I've got? Where do I think I can start applying some project management tools and techniques, whatever they might be? Yes, what events, what books are recommended that I can go to? And is there any formal training courses I can go to, either fund myself or get my organization to fund? You have to be able to kind of, going back to the questions Lindsay posed before, be able to look at those questions and say, well, actually, if I want to be able to answer those, well, actually, how am I going to support that from an L&D perspective?
cancel out, see what's coming up. Right, okay, so these are some of the practical things. You know, some of these are easier than others. But let's have a look. So I remember we're on this point, but which roles do you really want to pursue? So there's some research, obviously, about, you know, maybe people to speak to, or, you know, you need to narrow it down. What kind of role do you want to pursue? And then understanding what those roles and responsibilities are. You know, and you can do that research by looking at role profiles, job ads, whatever it is that you want to you find. But it's about understanding really what's in those roles and responsibilities. And that's not just a case of just reading through that list. It's about looking at every single thing that's on that list and doing some further in research and insights into that. So it's understanding what skills. So from a roles and responsibilities point of view, it'll give you a line, but actually what skills are underpinning that particular responsibility. Yeah. So again, you might find that with some of the roles, it's about planning. Okay, so what kind of skills are involved around the planning stuff? It might help inform in terms of the training and development and reading and things that Eileen's just talked about. You also want to think about what your current experiences are, and then also that transferable skill, because you can see here that if you're starting to understand what the roles and responsibilities are, what the underpinning skills are, and then you're looking at yourself. It's a self-awareness bit of, well, okay, so when they talk about this in a role profile for a project planner, actually, I've got something that's really similar to that, or kind of overlaps that, or actually it's identified something that I don't know much about, and I'm going to go and start doing something about that. But it's about the ability to think about what you've got. I used to always call it a personal stock take. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you are in terms of your career levels. It's just actually real self-awareness of understanding what skills you really have. Then you need to think about, okay, so we talked about the why project management. I always will give extra time and interest to people that can answer this, that obviously are really enthusiastic and passionate and really thought about it. You know, in a sea of people that want to get into project management, it's have this and articulate such a, you know, an answer that shows that you're serious about getting into project management. And yes, learn everything that you can. And Eileen's touched on how you can be doing that and what you can be looking into in terms of project management. But also the other thing you can do is find other people that do this role, the role that you're wanting to pursue, find them. You know, get them into your network, ask polite questions. Can I understand? Can I just borrow your ear for a second? Can I ask you a question? Learn everything that you can, you know, because it's going to hold you in good stead as you go forward. Bring the informal into everything that you're doing. And Eileen's just giving some great examples of that. One of the things that I've always found with, you know, some people are trying to get into project management, one of the most, apart from the student thing, so people coming in out of their first jobs and all that kind of thing, the other most common type of person that you get is somebody who's doing a hybrid role. So it's somebody today that is doing a business as usual role, whatever that might be, and somebody's asked you if you'll get involved in some kind of project related things. And what's happened is that you've got a taste for the project stuff and you want to do more of it. That is, you know, the kind of person that you most see in this kind of you know, trying to get into project management, doing the more you know, formal step. And the way that they've tended to do it is that organizations are not training, you know, not training them in project management. It's just, oh, you can do it because you know about this thing in the business. You're a subject matter expert around HR. Surely the project bit you can do. And they generally tend to, well, you know, I'm dabbling. I don't really know what I'm doing, but it just seems to be working. And that's what they're doing. They're bringing in the informal stuff. And the trick is then how do we then change that over into the formal? I'll just talk about that kind of thing in a second. But in order to be able to take the informal into the formal, you need to obviously get that kind of education. And there's a load of stuff out there, and there's a lot of free stuff out there. I mean, I'm sure you're all aware of things like Coursera and Udemy and LinkedIn and all of those kind of things. There's a lot actually of project management training that's free, that gets you going on the basics. And when we talk about the basics, we talk about things like, what is risk management? As a project manager, what do I need to do? What does stakeholder management mean? And what are some of the tools and techniques there? What's change control all about? It's those basics, what we call the fundamentals. And then that's the kind of training you can start with as the baseline before you start putting your hand in your pocket and paying for something. Yeah, there's a lot already there for you to start looking into. Then there's this thinking about what you can do right now. Of course, again, if you're already working in an organisation, chances are that your first opportunity, easiest opportunity, is within where you're working right now, because they already know you. Yeah. So before you think about leaving that organisation to pursue your dream job in project management, make sure you've absolutely found out whether it's going to be possible where you are now. Okay, because if you decide to leave, to pursue, it's going to be harder. So all I'm just saying is just make sure that you know and have scouted about the opportunities where you might already be. And then you can think about thinking about the next steps then, about thinking about leaving. You know, so again, this is the same for students that are leaving university. It's just thinking about, well, what is it that I need to be thinking about now to try and run this first opportunity, this first stepping stone. And again, it's quite hard to stand here and say for every single individual's personal journeys, because everybody's got something slightly different, but it's about what it is that you can do right now. And that might mean actually a training course will be enough to knock it over. Because what will happen is that what you can do right now, you know, it's going to come down to this at some point. It'll be a CV, it'll be a LinkedIn profile, it'll be something like that that you need to get in place. Because that's, unfortunately, is how it all works in terms of getting jobs and recruitment and all that kind of thing. It's a profile or it's a CV.
Can I just add a bit to this? So I've given very kind of simplistic examples all the way through. When I've been delivering a training course, I have got a full day's project management course, which takes me through all of the scheduling and risk management and stakeholder engagement based on creating a meal of sausage and mash for tea. Okay? I can demonstrate in creating a sausage and mash meal all of the elements of project management. Okay? So this revamping your CV is not about making things up. It's about putting your CV through a different lens and about recognizing what you've done and how what you have done in your job is actually using some of those tools. So you may not necessarily have delivered a project, but understanding those various different elements that you can then kind of say, well, actually, I understand the elements of project management and I've actually kind of got my good kind of 50–60% of my knowledge of those different areas, even though I've not necessarily delivered a project for the organization. So it is about just seeing things through a different lens that you get through the understanding of the different elements of project management that we've talked about.
I mean, generally what tends to happen is that we know that CVs go through a bit of a sausage factory, as you know, it's a keyword searching and things like that goes on. So for example, when I will say read through somebody's CV and they're trying to get into project management, you'll say, right, okay, so you talk this bit here about, you know, working with different departments, different agencies or whatever else, but you're not using that word stakeholder or stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement. Yeah? It's a simple thing like that. You're starting to bring in some of the terminology of project management. It's not a lie. It's just a different way of, as you say, through a different lens. Another classic one would be in a role that you might be performing where you're doing reporting. Again, this applies to students when you're doing dissertations or any kind of external work to, you know, while you're at university. If you're doing any kind of reporting in your role, again, it's a big thing in project management. What can you bring into in terms of the terminology? So, for example, rather than just saying, oh, it's this kind of report, you can think, well, look, in project management, they have a progress report, they have a status report, they have a highlight report. Lots of different ways, different terminology. And again, it's about, as we said, about finding the transferable skill, because that will be the thing that you're starting to revamp. Yeah. I can't go into it. There's a lot of things I could stand here and show you exactly how to write a CV, but again, we don't have time tonight. Maybe we'll come back and do a project management CV session because
you did one or two of those.
And the other one is that most people don't get a job by applying for a job advertisement. They get it through their network. And the reason why that is that people know you. So even though you've got barely any experience around project management, your network will know that you're a good person. Actually, this person works hard. They've got grit, they've got determination, and that will go a long way, which is why your network are often where you will get opportunity. So if you're not thinking about networks, I know it's that horrible word, network and networking, but you're here in the room tonight, you know, you are networking, but you just need to push it a little bit further and actually talk to people.
Well, we say that. And Lindsay and I do this frequently. We do events and people come in and they sit on the chair and they go out. Yeah, you're in a room and you look around the room, there are people who are experienced project managers. There are other people in the same position as you. These are the people you need to network with. Remember, 20% of your learning comes from other people. Yes, and what we find, particularly in the job that we do, people contact us when they want a job. Yeah, and we don't know them from Adam. Yes, they have it, and we have a number of people who kind of have worked with us over the years because they've volunteered to do things and contribute to things and actually get to know them. So when a job comes up, we're much more comfortable saying, actually, here's a good person over here, because they've networked, not just asking people for jobs. So yes, networking is something that you should do continuously. Yes, not just when you're job hunting.
Absolutely. So that's another thing to think about. So, you know, your network and how you can start to look at that. So you can go away this evening and think, you know what, I don't do enough of it. So actually, I might want to go and look at how I could do better at that. And then the final thing is that we'll make applications. What have you got to lose? So if you've been really thinking about this, you're doing a lot of learning, you perhaps dabbled and did a few online courses, you're feeling a lot more confident that you're understanding how the bits fit together. You've looked at what you've already got in terms of transferable skills. You've had a crack at doing the CV. You've asked around a few times and you've seen a job, apply for it. Just go for it. You might look at it and say, well, you know, I've only got half of the stuff that's there. So what? So what? Because actually you'll find that most people that see that job will not have 100% of it, will not even have 80% of it. What they will have is confidence and think, you know what, the only thing I need to do is get through the first day. I need to get in front of somebody, yeah, to talk to them. Well, you're not going to do that if you don't make any applications.
I think this is also a really interesting one in terms of, and it's almost kind of almost like good homework. Go and find a couple of project management jobs on the internet and do the analysis that Lindsay's talked about. Have a look at what's required in the role, have a look at the skills, and then think, well, actually, which bits am I missing? So when we're talking about planning your 70-20-10, trying to get a job that actually think, actually, I'm perhaps missing a few things. Well, there's a great way of actually identifying where your development's going to be, where you need to kind of look and learn a little bit more for the next time.
The other thing about the job adverts that you might see out there, you've got to remember the way that they write them. If you're lucky enough to find a job advert that's got 10 things on it, let's say you must have all of these kind of things. Just bear in mind that actually it's probably only the first 4 or 5 that are really important. All the rest of them are really like nice to have. Yeah, so never
to put them in that in case they might sometime be asked to.
Never look at them and rule yourself out, because actually they're not going to get everybody. You're not going to get people that have got everything. Yeah, so it's about the confidence thing, which is all these things we've talked about. Every step of it is about confidence. That's all it is. Yeah, so it's just about, you know, have a think about what you've heard tonight. Some of the questions. Hopefully you'll get the deck. Flick through it again. You know, and if you want to talk to, you know, or drop Eileen and I, or connect to us or whatever else, find us on LinkedIn and we'll be happy to try and help. But that's it for this evening. Really interesting, you know, different careers around project management. It's a great place to be. Obviously, you're here, you're committed, you know, just by being here and listening to this evening. You know, hopefully you've got some questions for us.
And my only thing that I would say as well is Lindsay and I both love project management, but neither of us would ever want to be a project manager ever again. Yes, there's definitely more to life than being a project manager, I would suggest.
Okay, any questions?
We have got a few online as well, so amazing. Thank you so much. I mean, hopefully you all sense that value. I mean, that was gold coming from 2 of the best professionals in the industry. So if I may, I'll just read a couple of them out from the
if there's any questions as well, I'm just conscious of time. We'll do a couple of questions, but if there's any more, you can put them in and we can kind of make sure when the recording becomes available, the questions are answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do that. And everybody in the room, obviously there's a chance to network just outside where we've got food and drink. Let me just mute Priscilla. And so you can ask your questions over a glass of wine or soft drink, whatever takes your fancy. But so first question we had online was from Alana, I believe, and Alana asked, what is the difference between a change manager and a project manager? And you did mention change management part of your talk.
Okay, so there's an interesting one. we used to got told project was all about delivering change into the organisation, and a lot of project management is focused on producing a deliverable. Yes, that is going to be used by the organisation, and it should incorporate change management, but there is now a whole different stream of change management, which looks very much a kind of changing the organisation and taking people through that change. So it's less about producing a system or a new process, it's about taking the people through that whole kind of process of changing what they do and how they do it. So it tends to sit alongside project management.
Excellent. And then Alicio asked, what are the most common challenges faced by a project manager? Quite general, but stakeholder
This is kind of how long is a piece of string, which we know the answer is twice as long as from one end to the middle. But in terms of kind of the key challenges, I would suggest there's a couple. One is about being given sufficient time to put together a plan and a budget that we believe in. Okay, there will be lots of pressure to actually kind of do it faster, do it cheaper, and do it kind of create a bigger solution than is actually required. And it takes quite a bit of determination to be able to stand up and defend how long it really will take, how much it really will cost, and what's truly involved in delivery. So I think that's a really big kind of challenge to kind of get that and then maintain that. And I think recognizing, we often talk about stakeholder engagement, about keeping everybody happy. I would love to see a project where a project manager and the sponsors kept everybody happy. Yes, it's about keeping everybody from stopping to put a dagger in your back. Yes, so it's about kind of keeping people on board, and so they're not the project is not being impacted by the negative perspective of the project. So I think stakeholder engagement, and going back to kind of what Lindsay said about people, just work is pretty straightforward. It's people. Yes, depending on what side of the bed they get out of in the morning, whether the train came on time, can all impact whether they're in the right mindset, whether they've got the right kind of capability. And one of the things we often talk about when you get people on the project, what we find is the biggest characteristic is sometimes availability, not whether they've got the skills to do the work. Oh, Eileen's available, you can have her. What does she know about this? Well, not much, but she's available. She's a pair of hands. Yeah, we'll support her in terms of doing that. So kind of really holding out to get what you need to deliver.
Amazing. I'll try and fit in a couple more. First one is a range, day rate range for project managers.
It depends, because we talked about different types of organisation, industry sectors, different domains. Again, it's a bit of a piece of string kind of answer. And day rates these days, in terms of contracts, is again, you've got two variations. Certainly here in the UK, that you've got you know, kind of limited company type contracting, and then you've got the PAYE stuff. So unfortunately, I couldn't give you an answer. That is, you know, is just one of those things that really infuriates recruiters, by the way. So if you have got the ear of a recruiter and you want to ask them a question, don't ask them that. You need to get more specific. So you've got to say to me, can you tell me roughly what the day rates might be for, you know, a finance type organisation, perhaps IT infrastructure type project manager in London, then they can give you a range. So you've got to get quite specific before I give you.
Goes back to those questions you asked before, isn't it? In terms of, do you know what role you want to do? Do you know what industry, what sector you want to play in?
Very good answer, thank you. So one more question and then we'll finish. So could you explain your understanding of PMO manager versus head of PMO roles?
So there's a, I was going to say there's a pretty easy answer to that, but it's not always kind of fully understood. So part of the work that Lindsay and I have done is we've developed a PMO competency framework, and we've done some kind of definitions around PMOs, and I was lead author for P-through, and we've defined 4 PMO roles: PMO administrator, PMO analyst, PMO manager, and PMO director, which is essentially head of PMO. And essentially a PMO manager is somebody who looks after a PMO. So they might be head of a project office, head of a program office, head of a sub-portfolio office, or even head of a portfolio office. And their job is around making sure that that PMO delivers what that PMO was set up to do. So they're very much about kind of setting up, running, transforming and closing that individual PMO, whereas a head of PMO is actually kind of looking across it organisation wide and says, if I understand what our organisation wants to deliver in terms of next year, we've got kind of 15 key strategic projects, but we've got 175 important projects. Then we've got kind of, you know, another 500 kind of small projects that we don't really kind of have a huge visibility on. How, from a PMO perspective, how do we support the organisation to ensure that those projects deliver well, use the right methods and the right tools? So they would essentially design the PMO structure. Oh, so do we have 27 PMOs? Do we have 3 PMOs? Which PMO does what? And set up the vision for the PMO managers to take forward. So it tends to be one PMO director, head of PMO, but you may have multiple PMO managers. And often you find that the head of PMO typically runs the organizational portfolio office.
And earns a lot more money.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Back to the
Indeed.
salary question. So amazing. So I just want to read this out from Joe Brown. Thank you, Joe. Excellent presentation. The best webinar I've attended by far, exclamation mark. So it's a reflection of the value they've had online and hopefully in-house as well, face-to-face. So you got the golden tickets tonight, so well done. If we can please show our appreciation for Lindsay and Eileen. Andrea, feel free to go off mute and say a few words. I'm just going to do a quick plug about the Spring School, which is in March. So I have shared the link on the chat. You can just Google ECS Proms G Spring School and you should be able to register. It's 4 weeks in March and it's a free event, all online. And I urge you all, if you're project management professionals looking at sustainability and responsible project management, then definitely register. So Andrea, feel free to say a few words.
Thanks, Asim. Well, when people said that we should definitely get Eileen and Lindsay in to talk, I hadn't expected such an informative and session. It's been wonderful, and thank you so much. And I know I've learned things, and I'm pretty sure other people will go away with a toolkit that they can actually use. It's been. I agree with some of the comments that it's one of the best webinars I've been to for a long time. So thank you.
Brilliant. So one final thing, thank you, David, again for reminding me. So as part of your professional development, if you want to keep track of this event and that you've attended, feel free to come over to myself or David, one of the committee members. We can help to certify this. You can put your name on it and we'll sign it. So that's all for tonight. As they mentioned, it's all about your network. So lots of professionals at various points in their careers here tonight. So I would suggest you head over to the food area and definitely exchange a few contact details, get networked on LinkedIn. It's definitely going to help you in your careers. So thank you very much.
Thank you.